All right, what's going on, guys, and welcome back. So, Raphael over in our Discord server shared this article with me titled 24 Best and Worst Pokemon Knockoffs. If you're new to the channel, once in a while, what we'll do is we'll go through articles from game journalists about the monster taming genre and sort of either, push back against them or, praise them, because we have had a couple articles that were actually pretty good. Right off the bat with the title of this one, calling whatever games are going to be here, calling them knockoffs is already a pejorative. So we're going to get into this, and we're probably going to end up bringing some pushback. So let's see what Cody Perez has to say. By the way, a lot of people argue that a lot of my videos are from articles from back in the late 2010s. This is from 2022 November. So it's only a few months old. Immense success always comes with the certainty of another property or person trying to emulate that popularity. Few franchises face this fact as much as the Pokemon series. I would highly argue against that. I mean, there's a lot of franchises that have people trying to emulate similar success. You can look at Fortnite with how many Battle Royales there are. You can look at Doom with how many FPS games there are. Every single game that sort of started a trend has that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But anyway, the Pokemonster collecting adventures of the games and anime quickly garnered the attention from fans and fellow creators alike. Since the creation of the first games in 1990s, many have tried and succeeded in copying Game Freak's turn-based formula. Now, this is where I'm going to have an issue because Game Freak didn't invent turn-based. A lot of games have their own separate turn-based formulas, but anyway. Some were fellow JRPGs on consoles across various generations, while others were fellow TV series. How do you copy a turn-based formula from a TV series? All try to capitalize on the success of Pokemon. Despite the literal hundreds of Pokemon knockoffs, not all of them are worthy of your attention. Some are popular for their welcomes attempts at capturing joy from the original series, while others are maligned for their cash grab attempts, funny coming from someone defending Pokemon. In this, we're going to go over 24 most notable. So they're going to start with worst knockoffs. So Nexomon. In terms of the worst Pokemon knockoffs, there are many games in the anime that tried to capture the feel of the original Pokemon but failed considerably. These are 12. They failed in many areas, from production values to the turn-based gameplay to the designs to even overall animation, though not all of them were complete failures that you should avoid at all costs. They at least warrant caution while playing. So Nexomon Extinction. The least egregious offender, so I guess this is in order of least egregious to most egregious, is Nexomon and its successor Extinction aren't the worst Pokemon clones to exist, appearing on mobile devices. Turn-based battles with cute monsters. Okay, so what's the problem? But the problem is Nexomon does so little outside of that. The monster designs are fine, but the gameplay is a bit too heavy and lacks... What do you mean it's too heavy? The gameplay is too heavy and lacks the personality of the original games. That is so subjective. What does that mean? What do you mean it's too heavy? If anything, Nexomon's gameplay is really light and needs more complexity. What do you mean it's too heavy and lacks the personality? What does that mean? In terms of story, I think Nexomon has a better story than any Pokemon game we've seen, especially the second one. I don't know what they're talking about. Not to mention, it promotes its story so heavily, but it ends up being childish and immature in its writing. Now, the thing is, if you take yourself too seriously, then yes, maybe you're going to think that the fourth wall breaks and stuff like that is too childish. But that's only if you're someone who just takes themselves way too seriously. You have to, are you trying to tell me Pokemon's story isn't too childish? I don't know. It's kind of a weird, I'm not going to get into Dinosaur King because I've never played it. Monster Sanctuary. How are you going to call Monster Sanctuary a knockoff? Monster Sanctuary's idea of blending together the monster battling genre with classic Metroidvania exploration is neat and novel. Sadly, it restricts itself, alienating fans who might not like both of these experiences within the same game. Well, the game's not made for those people. Suppose you aren't a fan of 2D side-scrolling with backtracking, platforming, and monotonous exploration. In that case, Monster Sanctuary might not be worth it for its turn-based battles. Speaking of which, those battles themselves are just passable on their own. Okay, this is how you know someone didn't play the game. The battles are 3-on-3 and they're highly complex. They're just quote-unquote passable if you suck at RPGs and don't know what you're doing. I got wrecked when I first started playing Monster Sanctuary, but once I learned its systems, then I kind of understood what needed to be done. If you go into Monster Sanctuary thinking it's a Pokemon game, which this person clearly did since they're labeling it as a knockoff, yeah, you'll get wrecked because you can't just spam Earthquake. Okay, Nexomon, I disagree. I definitely agree that it obviously copied a lot of aspects from Pokemon. I don't think there's an issue with that. I think imitation in some aspects is the greatest form of flattery. But with Monster Sanctuary, like, I'm pretty sure the devs only played like 2 Pokemon games ever. Like, their games are very, very, like, barely based on Pokemon. So to call this a knockoff, like, to me, this completely discredits all of this person's opinions. Like, this is just a dumbass take. Like, I'm not, like, I'm sorry if I sound triggered, but this is really stupid. Like, Monster Sanctuary is the least Pokemon-like monster taming game that I can think of. Like, that's insane. World of Final... I haven't beaten this game yet. Monster Rancher, okay, again, how does Monster Rancher play like Pokemon? A considerable part about creating the monster collecting game. Also, Monster Rancher is not a monster collecting game. It's a monster taming, monster raising game. It's not a collecting game. Because you can technically collect different monsters, but you can't have like an entire like compendium of them, or like you know, store them and use them. Like it's very limited in its collection aspect, right? You're not catching stuff. You're not. There's so many aspects that are different. This is a menu-based game. This is not even an overworld. Pokemon fans, let's see, Monster Rancher will make even the strangest Pokemon design look a whole lot better. You know there's a problem with your series mascot if it's an unattractive walking eyeball, so that's our problem. Worse still, the gameplay is almost button-mashing arena fighter. So how is that like Pokemon? It's not turn-based. It doesn't have an RPG. It's not an RPG. There's no world to explore. It has fusion. Pokemon doesn't have fusion. What? It's a Pokemon knockoff because it has Pokemon in it. All right, sorry, it has monsters in it. Like this person's actually brain dead. Fighting Foodon's never played. Neopets, stop. Dragon Drive, never played. Some of these I've never even heard of. Monster Harvest, this is literally Stardew Valley with turn-based combat. If anything, this is a Stardew Valley-like game. No. Okay, best Pokemon knockoffs. Temtem. Okay, I'm sorry, but if you... and again, if you're a fan of Temtem, I'm not trying to, like shit on you, but if you're going to argue that Temtem is less of a quote-unquote knockoff than Nexomon or Monster Sanctuary, you're actually, like, mentally deficient. Like, you're missing brain cells. How are you going to... Temtem is, like, one of the closest games to Pokemon in terms of Pokemon-like games. They both have 8 gyms, okay? Oh, sorry, Temtem, they're called dojos. Like, Temtem has a stamina bar. That's literally the biggest difference. It has a stamina bar, and you can see people in the overworld. Like, I don't understand how they're gonna argue Temtem's less like Pokemon. And meanwhile, they have a Fakemon that they used in the image here that Crema actually got the rights to. That's a Fakemon based on a fake Generation 8 Pokemon starter. Like, Temtem, again, I'm not trying to knock on the game. Like, it's totally fine. I think Temtem's fine. But if you're gonna argue that Nexomon's a knockoff and Monster Sanctuary is a knockoff, or I guess bad knockoffs, and Temtem's a quote-unquote good knockoff, like, that's insane. Like, clearly this person's just like, oh, it's 3D, it looks nicer. Like wow. Metabots, okay, Metabots isn't a Pokemon knockoff at all, it's awesome. Lumion Legacy is, they consider that good. See, again, 3D, anime, right? Another 3D one. How's Dragon Quest? Oh my god, Dragon Quest Monsters. Dragon Quest V. Okay, let's see what this guy has to say. The Dragon Quest series predates Pokemon, but it didn't stop it from trying to capitalize on the later success spin-off Monster Sub-Series. Here are the iconic creatures from DQ games that make their reappearance. Your slimes. Okay, this time they aren't just your enemies, but beasts that you can tame. Dragon Quest. Oh, I just dropped my fucking pop filter. Dragon Quest V has monster taming. That came out before Pokemon. Shut up. The Dragon Quest Monster series, was it probably created in order to capitalize on the success of Pokemon? Perhaps, but Dragon Quest V always had monster taming. Like, that's insane to me. Dragon Quest V was a monster taming game before Pokemon came out. The fact that they decided to have a spin-off series dedicated to monsters doesn't change the fact that they came out with monster taming before Pokemon. Coromon's a great game. They're arguing it's a knockoff again, but they're complimenting it for being good. So I'm not gonna go too much into that. Beyblade, shut up. You can call Beyblade a not, like, you know, this person's just fishing for like Pokemon and then related searches. Nino Kuni, okay. Monster Hunter Stories 2. How's Monster Hunter Stories a knockoff of Pokemon? How would you consider that a knockoff? Like, even if you were to consider Coromon 1, because it's very similar, I still wouldn't consider it that, but let's just... How are you going to consider Monster Hunter Stories a knockoff? In fact, Pokemon took aspects from Monster Hunter Stories, like the original's Wild Area, quote-unquote. I'm telling you right now, Nemona is literally just the sister-like character from Monster Hunter Stories 2, in terms of, like, even just design and kind of personality in their role. Literally, like... It's a turn-based game where you can ride monsters. It's Pokemon. Yokai Watch, yeah, you guys are the reason why Yokai Watch had trouble in the West. Yu-Gi-Oh! Okay, this is another stupid one. Yu-Gi-Oh! Never started out as a card game. If you pay attention, Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 0, what a lot of people call it, the original manga too, it was actually just based around games in general. It's just that the Duel Monsters aspect became popular, but the original, like, Yu-Gi-Oh! was just called Yu-Gi-Oh! And then they had Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. Digimon's not a knockoff of Pokemon. It's if anything, it's more like a Tamagotchi, and that's it. I'm sorry, I can't spend too much time reading. Like this is ridiculous. Like, how are you gonna argue that Monster Sanctuary is a Pokemon knockoff and it sucks because I'm too stupid to work out the battling system, but Nexomon's bad and its battle system is too heavy, whatever the hell that means, and Monster Rancher is a Pokemon clone because what? I'm waiting because there's monsters in it. I don't know. Oh, but Temtem's the one of the pinnacles of what's considered a good, Pokemon-like game. Like, come on, like. Oh, and a Roblox game. And Dragon Quest Monsters, even though Dragon Quest came out before, and Dragon Quest V has monster taming, which predates Pokemon, which Game Freak actually used for inspiration for Pokemon. But it's a Pokemon knockoff, guys. And and Beyblade too, because the Beyblades have Bit Beasts. Like, stop. I even said Zoids is a... Guys, this is what we have to deal with the mainstream games journalists. They're trash. A lot of these journalists will just, like, try to dunk on anything that goes that like will threaten Pokemon, and then a lot of these same people will praise Pokemon for how great it is, despite, like, modern games realistically not being that good, and besides Legends. And then they'll turn around and be like, oh, we're so objective, but in reality they're just bowing over to the corporate entity that they want those review copies for. They want to get on their good sides. I think this article is, honestly, from what we've read, obviously I'm not going to read out, like, their reasoning behind games I haven't played, but, like, even like Neopets, like Neopets is literally exactly pet raising Tamagotchi mixed with monster collecting of Pokemon. Don't you only have, at least in the original Neopets, didn't you only have one Neopet at a time? And you just play mini games with them. Like, it was so much different than Pokemon. Like, I don't understand. And then all this person's complaints are like, oh, the game was hard. Oh, the game was tedious. Oh, you had to do this weird thing that isn't like Pokemon, so it's a bad Pokemon knockoff. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think about this article. I think it's absolute trash. I think Wealth of the Geeks should be ashamed of themselves. And that's all I have to say. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. Check out my Twitter, Discord, and Patreon. All links below. Special thanks to the patrons, especially Jim Hamilton, Dro Ghost, Dark Persona, Exodus, and Candy Morency. And just bye.